All right. Welcome to the monthly pricing webinar from Claims Delegates. I'm Andy McCabe. We've only got one guy in the room, so we're going to get through the initial portion, the overview, and then we're going to get into see how we can help out Mr. Matt in his particular case in New Mexico. So I'm going to share my screen and get going. Here we go. All right. Baking in profits. I developed this brief little course as an offshoot of what I do for my clients on a day-to-day basis. I run a consulting company called Claims Delegates. We write Xactimate estimates. And when you're writing as many estimates as we write on an annual basis, you want to be sure that they are profitable estimates, that you're baking in enough profits for your client. So that's what I'm going to show you how we do that and the approach to that. The bottom line is Xactware. Xactimate does not accommodate for any contractor overhead or profit considerations. Period. End of story. I'm going to show a little more evidence of that, but that is what it comes down to. Xactware is not in the business of making sure we stay in business. They are in the business of accounting for costs, and that's what Xactimate is. It's a cost estimating system. So let's get moving. Oh, come on. Here we go. This is me. I've been in the restoration industry since 1999. I've been trained and certified all kinds of different ways, and now I write Xactimate full-time, as I just said. I also offer in-person training, consulting on large loss, business coaching when the need arises, and I want to see the restoration industry raised up to a higher level. So I want one of my goals is to raise the professionalism of our industry. And one of the great ways to raise professionalism is to raise profits. We can't help anybody if we're broke. So let's see about raising the profits. Why should I use a markup? And aren't there rules to follow? Well, you should use a markup because you're a contractor. Contractors, that's how they make their money. They take their costs, they use a markup. The markup should cover their profit and overhead needs. Markup should keep the lights on and have a little bit extra left over at the end of the day for, let's face it, running a business is a high risk proposition. And I believe in risk versus reward. If I'm going to take a lot of risk, I want to have a lot of upside on the tail end of that risk. Aren't there rules to follow? Yes and no. There are very few rules when it comes to pricing your work as a contractor, just like there's very few rules if I want to go start a hot dog cart in downtown Bend, Oregon. I don't have to follow any rules to price those hot dogs. I'm going to make a really good hot dog, so I'm going to charge $10 per hot dog. I am well within my rights to do that, and you are well within the rights to charge what you need to charge. Here's a couple memes I came up with last couple months. The Industry Standard Pricing Rules and Regulations is a book that does not exist. The Industry Standard Pricing Rules is a website that does not exist. We operate in the insurance claims ecosystem, and we hear a lot of BS, frankly, from adjusters and the carriers who want to control their costs. Naturally, I don't blame them, but to mandate industry standard pricing across the board is anti-competitive behavior. And that's why Xactware doesn't do it. Xactware is a price guide, and they'll tell you 100 different ways that they're a price guide. So when we have adjusters say, well, you can't charge above industry standard pricing, they are speaking out of their butt. There is no industry standard pricing. if there was, we would all be staring down lawsuits for monopolization or anti-competitive behavior or collusion or whatever else you want to call it. So control the profit, control your future. If you don't control on the front end how much money you're going to make on the back end, you have very little control over your company and the future of your company. So I advocate very strongly that you should build in. What do you need? You should figure, you should have an idea. What do you need to make a profit? What do you need to cover, keep the lights on, cover your overhead? Matt and I had a brief conversation before I started, and it sounds like he's got a higher than normal overhead with the amount of staff that he has and the revenue that he's doing. It sounds to me that his overhead's probably over 30%, maybe closer to 40%. That is going to change over time, and so now his markup today that he chooses to use today is probably going to be different than the markup he's going to use a couple of years from now, because he's going to further refine his systems. He's going to further build in efficiencies and get better at what he does. And so his overhead's going to shrink. His overhead percentage are going to shrink. And so we need to have the ability to change our markups as we go, which is kind of the point. So let's do some math. Margin leads to profit. Margin is not profit. Margin is what's left over after you take the costs out of a sale. But you take that margin and you have to reduce that further by your overhead. Once you take so it's right here in front of me. I'll just read it. Sales is your revenue minus job costs equals your gross profit, also known as gross margin. That's on a job basis. Your gross margin or your gross profit minus your business overhead equals your net profit. Very important to understand your numbers. Even if you're looking backwards, once you do your taxes once a year or whatnot, you need to know, what was my net? What was my overall gross revenue, right? What was my sales? What were my job costs out of that sale? And then at the end of the day, how much did I have to pay to keep the lights on, pay the secretary, pay the rent, blah, blah, blah. What was left over for me as a business owner at the end of the year? And that's what we're here to do. We're here to make money. We're here for that net. I'm not here for the revenue. I'm here for the net. Revenue minus job costs minus overhead divided by revenue equals your profit margin. That's your net margin. That should be a goal. We should have a goal in mind before we start any race or any activity, right? Any journey. We need to know what the end is. This profit margin needs to be your goal at the beginning of the year. I have a goal based on my whatever your projected revenue is. I have a goal. I'm going to get this margin. This is how much money is going to be left over at the end of the year. This is a great tool especially for folks who don't understand the difference between a margin and a markup, right? A margin is what's left over. A markup is what you use to mark up your costs in order to get that margin. These are not the same number. So if I have a margin of 30% that I have to cover, I need to mark up my costs 43%. If I have margin of higher than that, I need to mark it up higher than that. So just take a second and absorb this this table here and get to understand this. Xactimate is a job cost estimating platform. The only way to profit is markup, right? You can take Xactimate numbers. Xactimate has told us, and I'll show you here in a minute, time and time again, they don't accommodate for any markup. They don't put markup into these things. They accommodate for costs as best they can. And labor labor and material yields as best they can. And they're pretty good at it. But the only way to get profit out of it is to use a markup of some kind. Here is a great photo of Bill Loveland, one of the founders and creators of Xactware. This is him speaking to a conference of the RIA, and his words: "You've got to have the nerve to charge what you need to charge." And we're speaking about carriers and adjusters limiting markup, limiting folks to saying you can only have 10 and 10, or when adjusters say you can't use 10 and 10 because it's a one trade job or it's not a complicated job, blah, 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 blah. And Bill Loveland says, well, you're the contractor. You're the one entering the contract with the consumer. That is not a contract you're entering with the insurance company. You've got to have the nerve to charge what you need to charge in order to stay in business, to make a profit, to be here next year. So what is a reasonable profit? This is a big question. And I don't take anyone's opinion except for people that work for me or in my business. Because what's a reasonable profit for my business is going to be maybe it's an unreasonable one for your business. Maybe it's not enough for your business, or maybe it's, you look at the profit that I am shooting for and you're like, oh, I don't need that. Well, that's you. You do you, I'll do me. But what is a reasonable profit? Let's talk about some rough numbers. So Matt, I mentioned you probably have north of 30% overhead, right?
Right.
And I like to shoot for the businesses that I've worked for. I've run some big businesses and some small businesses. 12% net is a great goal. And then that's a number that I've had in my head and on my P&Ls for a long time, shooting for that 12%. And some years you make it, some years you beat it. But having that idea of what you need to get at the front end is the key. So if I understand my numbers, if I understand my business and know I've got a 30% business overhead, that's just what it costs me. Every day, whether I go get a job and do a job and bill for a job today, I know that 30% of whatever revenue I bring in is going to go to keep my lights on, to pay the secretary, to pay the car payments and things like that, pay the insurance. So if I decide 30% is my overhead number, 12% is my net profit goal, that is a 32% break-even margin. So let's come back to this. See if I can go backwards. Yeah, there it is. So if I need 32% margin to break even and making a profit, accomplishing your profit goals and covering your overhead is a great goal. And that's called break even. 32%. That's a margin. What do I need to mark up? What kind of markup do I need to use to get to that 32% margin? Well, roughly 47% markup. All right. Keep that number in your head. 47% markup. Oh, shoot. Here it is right here. Didn't need to go backwards. So 32% break even requires a 47% markup. And I've got windows all over the place. 47% minus 10 and 10. Let's face it, we're not going to convince carriers to do things differently anytime in the near future. So we will continue to use the 10 and 10 number that they, air quotes, allow us to use. So 10 and 10 is 20%. It's a markup, not a margin. 10 and 10 markup equals what kind of margin? 10 and 10 is 16% margin. Okay. So if I take my 47% markup that I've got to do minus the 10 and 10 that I'm going to put on the end of the Xactimate estimate, I need an additional 27% markup in order to accomplish my goals. Once again, what's my goal? 32%. 32% margin requires 47% markup. I'm just going to keep repeating numbers because sometimes it helps just to hammer it home. If I need 47% markup, I take out the 10 and 10, I still need additional 27% markup. So where am I going to get that? Here's another meme. I'm a meme guy. I do memes all over the place. So 0% is the amount of markup Xactimate builds in to any line item of their pricing database. Now, Matt, after we're done here, if you want me to open up an Xactimate estimate and we'll drill down into a couple line items, I will illustrate this in real time.
Right.
So here is, this is from the Overhead and Profit white paper. You will get a copy of this at the end of the presentation. Direct quote, general overhead are expenses incurred by a general contractor that cannot be attributed to individual projects, i.e. job costs, and include any and all expenses necessary for the contractor to operate their business. Xactware has done several different versions of this Overhead and Profit white paper. 2020 is the latest one, and I think they finally distilled it down and got rid of some unnecessary language. Where a lot of adjusters try to hang their hat is on this word general contractor. Well, you're not a general contractor, so you're not owed markup. Well, in the 2020 version of the white paper, I believe, and I think I misquoted it here, Xactware took out the word general contractor and just said contractor, because that's what we are. The amount of overhead and profit is left to the discretion of the estimator. I'm going to see if I can pull up that white paper. Let me see if I have it actually in here. Nope. Okay. I'm going to stop my share right here, and I'm going to pull up that white paper because I think it's worth reading here live. Let's see here, white papers. No, claims delegate, Xactimate, white papers. Here it is. I'm going to expand this and I'm going to share this screen again. Oh, we've got Gabriel. Welcome to the show, Gabriel. I was wondering when somebody else would show up. So both you guys, Matt and Gabriel, you guys have the ability to talk. So interrupt me if you have any questions. Matt, how are we doing so far? You got any questions so far?
Oh, this is great. Thank you.
Okay, good. And here we go. Let's dig into this white paper. This is the crux of the matter. And I've highlighted it for fun. Here it is. The amount of overhead and profit, as well as how and where it is accounted for within the estimate, is left to the discretion of the estimator based upon the conditions of the job and the service provider performing the work. All right. When Xactware does their pricing, they do a pretty good job of surveying pricing and costs across the industry. It says right here, those surveyed are specifically asked to not include expenses that would be included in the general overhead and profit markup percentages, i.e., they don't want to know what your margin is. They don't want to know what your markup is. They just want to know what your costs are, and that's what they report. That's what gets reported to the Xactware pricing. That's what gets reported into the Xactimate ecosystem. It's costs only, no markups. Down here a little bit further, general overhead expenses are not included in Xactware's unit pricing. You know, if I could take every adjuster by the ear and say that 1,000 times to their face, they might get it. They might. Once again, general overhead expenses are not included in Xactware's unit pricing. Okay, keep going down. Job-related overhead expenses job-related overhead expenses should be added as separate line items to the Xactimate estimate. What is a good example of a job-related overhead expense? Well, that would be supervision. If you have a full-time supervisor on site, that is a job overhead expense, especially if that supervisor is, they could be a working supervisor or they're there to supervise, train, quality control. They don't do the actual work. That's a true job cost overhead. That's a job overhead item. Keep going down. Last paragraph. The building cost data published by Xactware is not designed to be inclusive of sales tax, O&P, or O&P, general O&P or job-related O&P within the unit pricing. This, I don't know how adjusters can read this and still tell me that, oh, it's just a one trade job, so you don't get to mark it up. You don't get O&P. It's just the amount, and even the amount of O&P. Like, you can't tell me that 10 and 10 is the number, because it is left to the discretion of the estimator based upon the conditions of the job and the service provider performing the work. Okay. Any questions on the O&P white paper?
So when you say, and we've done this, we've tried to use supervisor hours as overhead expenses, and then we get told that that's not a legitimate charge and that they don't, that the job scope doesn't allow for supervision, it's not complicated enough, those types of things. What do you say to that?
Well, I asked to speak to their supervisor. And then when they give me the name or the number or the supervisor, it's like, oh, you have a supervisor. Does he get paid? Oh, he does. Okay. So why do you have to have a supervisor? Your job isn't that complicated either. So I just throw it back at them. Everyone has a supervisor, and that supervisor doesn't do the work. It's an overhead function. Whether that supervisor, whether you consider it business overhead or job overhead, you've still got to expense for it. You've still got to find a way to cover that. So, when they try to get technical and stuff like that, I throw the white paper at them. I ask them to show me what part of the policy mandates what I can and cannot charge for. I asked to see what part of the policy says what my pricing should be, and what part of the policy allows them to tell me what my billing practices are. A reasonable adjuster is going to realize that they're up against a wall at some point in that conversation. But at the end of the day, we have to stand our ground. We are the professionals. We have the contract. We have the service to provide. We have the job to do. And we're the ones that have to warranty it. We're the ones on the line if we leave a cord out and the homeowner trips over it and breaks their face. We are on the hook for that. We are taking all the risk. So we get to charge what we feel is necessary, not what the adjuster feels is necessary. So yeah, supervision on every single one. Supervision and markup on every single one. Early on in my career, I started with a company called Dow Columbia out of Portland, Oregon, one of the founding members of ASCR, which eventually turned into the RIA. Excuse me. Before, I want to say Xactimate 20 or Xactimate 21 or something like that. I would say up till about 2005, we were marking up every single job. Mitigation got marked up. Contents got marked up. Roofing got marked up. And it was a 10 and 10 because somewhere along the lines, we all acquiesced to this fugazi number of 10 and 10. And if you were paying attention to 5 minutes ago, you realize that a 10 and 10 markup is only a 16% margin, and no one can live on a 16% margin, especially when we need 40. When we need 32% margin, 16% is not going to cut it. We're moving backwards every day. So what happened? How did we make money? Well, people started cheating. We stopped paying our technicians what they were worth. We became brutally efficient in our business operations. And we found a way to stay in business and make money, but it shouldn't be that hard. We don't take our pricing cues from anyone but ourselves, right? We don't even take our pricing cues from our competitors, right? That would be collusion. That would be anti-competitive behavior. So that's what I say. It's an old argument. It's a very old argument for sure. But at the end of the day, they don't run my business. Let me get back in here. Reshare this. Okay. Xactware tells us to use our own margins. I was at the RIA conference this year in Reno, and this is a picture of Mr. Mike Fulton. And Mike Fulton, president of Xactware, says we've provided tools to build in the appropriate margins for your business. This is Xactware telling us, a room full of contractors, you have the tools. We can't tell you what your markup should be, but we've given you the tools to mark it up. And that's why you guys are here. So let's get into it. Hopefully you guys can open up a web browser and go to pricing.xactware.com/editor. Actually, you probably can get there by pricing.xactware.com without the editor part, but it doesn't hurt. So why don't you guys let me know when you're there, and I'm going to share that screen. Maybe. Oh, this is in presentation mode. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right, now I'm going to share this screen. So before we go much further, let's talk about margin. Let's talk about margin and markup. Matt, based on what you've just heard and our earlier conversation, what kind of margins do you think your business needs to cover?
Well, and for what is it about?
So overhead,
the 32% margin, 47% markup.
So the 30% overhead and 12% net profit seemed reasonable?
It did, yeah. 2 years ago, we were at 13% net profit in the year. Last year, we missed that quite a bit. We were at 3%, but if we can 12%, that is that being the goal.
Good. All right. So you're going to be using, we're going to assume 10 and 10. So we're going to be looking for a 27% markup number. So Gabriel, are you still hanging?
Yep, I'm here.
Perfect. Can you, are you guys both at this screen?
Yep, I do see that screen now on my computer.
Okay. The first thing you're going to have to do, which I left out of my last presentation, I totally forgot, is come to your business here. My business is called Claims Delegates. And if you haven't done this before, this is going to say import Xactware price list elements. And I'm going to select all these things and hit import. Are you gonna do this as we go along, or do you just want me to go through it?
I'm doing it as we are going.
Perfect. All right. Let me know when that is done importing. It takes a minute.
Okay. Okay. Yep. Mine is done importing.
Perfect. And we go to home and we go to markets right here. You can see I've got many clients doing many different things with their price lists. The beauty of this is X1. The beauty of X1 is that once you set it, it's there. And every month when Xactware does additions and revisions to the price list, they change definitions, they change all sort of things, labor yields, material yields, and things like that. That is all automatically done to the price list. And all you have to do is export a new one. All you have to do is publish it. So exporting the price list in X1 using this price list editor is called publishing. So we're going to, Matt, you and I are going to do the same market, but Gabriel, choose the market that's appropriate for you and hit this plus button. So you first thing come up with, so Matt, you're in, what part of the state are you in New Mexico?
Albuquerque area, which is central.
Central. Let's just do central. Oh, you can only have so many.
So mine didn't pop up anything under where it says the market pricing. You know, where it says order market description. Below that is just blank.
You mean here?
Yeah.
Here, well, because you haven't created anything yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're about to.
Okay.
I created every single one of these.
Okay, gotcha.
So let's do CNM. So I mean, you can call it whatever you want. It's important that you write this down so you can find it again. And I'm going to call this Central New Mexico. Sorting order doesn't really matter. I mean, I guess we can go. Let's see what happens when we do one. And the linked Xactware market is important. What is the current? This is New Mexico AL. There it is. You have to link it to the actual Xactware market that exists. So the price list you've been using, Matt, is probably NMAL 8X underscore blah, 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 blah. Right? So write that down.
See that?
I'm going to write it down. CENM. Okay. And then the market is NMAL. Write that down. Oh, I just moved everything down. Okay, I see.
I didn't see that part on my end at all.
Did you go ahead and do what I just? Did you fill this out and hit save?
Yeah, but I didn't have that last part. I had the
link to this part?
Yeah, I didn't have that. I had sorting order and then there was nothing below.
That means you probably need to come back here and make sure that your price list elements are imported. Or,
okay. Sorry about that.
It's all right. Did you get it?
Yes.
Okay. So now you're at, oh, come on. Go to markets. Here we go. All right. So we're going to find the price list we just made, and we're going to go edit. Oh, whoops. Nope. We're going to open it. There we go. So click on it until let me know when you're here.
Yep.
Okay. We're looking for publication factors. This is factoring that's going to happen every time, every time you publish this price list, preferably once a month, every time it's updated, every time Xactimate updates it. We've got 3 different things we can mark up. You can use a different factor for each one of these. But for our purposes today, we're going to increase. And we said 27% across the board. Now, some guys say, my labor's off the charts. I need to goose my labor more than that. That's fine. Some guys say, yeah, I don't really need that much, to goose my equipment pricing that much. So it depends on your market, depends on your gut feelings. Some guys might really lower, like they might not do a component factoring or equipment component factoring, but they might have a 40% here in labor. They might have a 50% here in material. Just depends on what your gut tells you. I would recommend using the same number across the board. It's easier to explain because when it comes down to it, you're going to have to explain why you did this. And your answer is, these are my margins. I have a 30% overhead. I have to get 12% net profit. That's what I have to have. That's 32% gross margins I've got to hit in order to get my gross margin. You can ask the adjuster, if I need to get 37 or 32% gross margin, how much do I need to mark it up? They're not going to know how to do that math. And then you can educate them. You can show them the table that I showed you. You're going to get a copy of that as part of your documents and say, you see, I need 47%. And since I'm marking this estimate up 10 and 10, I still need another 27% markup. So here we are, publication factors. For this market, 27% across the board. I'm going to hit save. Yes. Overwrite. Yes. There we go. Okay. Now we're coming back here. Go back to home. And we're going to publish. We're going to select the market that we just did. I have the option of publishing every single one of these. I just don't. So Central New Mexico, I'm publishing that one. To all my instances, I have a couple different subscriptions to Xactware. So I publish them. You probably only have one here. Just make sure it's selected. And then here's your publication name. This is the suffix. So the front end of this price list is going to be called CENNM. And then the suffix is where Xactware puts the underscore May 22, underscore March 22. I've been using Q2 underscore 22 or the month. You use what you are comfortable with. If you use an underscore here, you can absolutely use an underscore, make it look more like the regular price list, right? When it shows up in the estimates. But for here, I'm just going to use, well, shoot, we're almost Q3, aren't we? No, when does Q3 start? Pretty soon, right? July? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go, just to keep my nomenclature consistent, I'm going to call this Q3 22. And I'm not sure how important this is, allow others to duplicate these price lists. Version 28. Xactimate 28 is going away. It should not actually work anymore if you're trying to use it. So I don't know why this is still in here, but that's it. So once you have your suffix, write that down. So I'm writing this down right after the CENNM is going to be Q3 underscore 22. Okay, next. publish. And that's going to take a second. Dun, 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 dun.
So this is automatically going to generate new prices in our price lists and mark everything up by 27% how we put it up. And so every time we send this off, the insurance company will be like, okay, well, these numbers have been changed. That's when we have to put that markup on this.
Yeah, that's when you have to have that conversation. Exactly. And that conversation will be easier the more times you have it.
And do you change this every month, or is it just this, or is it every quarter? Or?
So what we did just now was we did the publishing factoring. So every time we go to publish this, it will have those factors all automatically in it. So next month, if you come in here and just, let's let this finish, but if you decide, hey, 27 was too much, publication error. Oh, priceless publications.
Mine says the same thing, error.
Well, that's a first. Interesting. Let's come back into publication factors. Okay. Well, there's a first time for everything. That has not happened to me before. Let's go back in and see what happens. I mean, you can see I've been doing this a long time. That's the very first time I've ever seen that. Gabriel, were you able to do it?
No, mine is continues to say error code, and we have done this. Our company has done this for quite some time, and then we were getting so much pushback that that we just started manually doing it on each estimate. So yeah, we have done this quite a bit, but we're always told that it only factors in for contractors doing the reconstruction, that it doesn't factor into the mitigation portion.
Well, Xactware's white paper was pretty clear.
Yeah. And I believe on the white paper, does it say contractor or does it say general contractor?
The new white paper says contractor.
Okay. Yeah, because I believe in the past, did it say general contractor?
It did, and that was a point of contention. That's
okay.
why adjusters are hanging their head on that.
When did they change that?
When they revised it in 2020.
Okay. Yeah, because that's what kind of got us in trouble back then. It was, well, it clearly says general contractor. Our argument was we do have a GC license, so we are technically a general contractor.
Well, yeah, you're a contractor, and Xactware it's pretty clear. They didn't say only reconstruction guys,
right,
should mark this up. They said they don't mark up anything, and it's on us. It's on the user to do it. Yeah, what is going on here? It doesn't usually take this long.
That was a few days after. Bro, when they just blame them.
Come on.
Oh, they have to
Well, what I'll do after this, I'll try to do it a different market. Okay. Okay. Okay, didn't give me an error that time. Okay, let's come into Xactimate. I've got a subcontractor probably trying to write in here right now. I'm kicking him out. So sorry. All right, let me share. Oh, come here, share. Here we go. Okay, so now we're in our Xactimate. I'm gonna pick I've got a sample job that I like to use. Sample mit. Fine, it's a little baby. So you're going to, the first time you do this, you're going to have to download this price list. But you can't do it into Xactimate itself. There's no place to do it. There's no place to download price lists. You've got to do it inside an estimate. So pick an estimate, pick a copy of an estimate. Doesn't matter. Go to parameters. Let me know if you want me to slow down. And then come to price list. Let's see if it downloaded. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Nope, not seeing it. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Like I don't know why, but so here we are. We request a price list and we request by name. And this is where we put in CEN in M. This is why we wrote this down so we could do it exactly. Q3_22. Don't need to download it to a specific profile at all. And unless you're operating in a different, doesn't matter. And then you have to do this twice if you want to download it to a specific profile. And download. And this should do it. And there it is. It found it. I'm going to select it, hit next, take my tax. Can I go none? Can I go none? And then, yes, I will reprice. And then what I'll do for you guys is illustrate. So this estimate is sitting at, let's save and exit and come back. There it is, $7,045. And just for illustration purposes, we're going to request the actual price list. What's the zip there, Matt?
87111.
87111. There it is. And we'll go none, no tax, and let's reprice. So there's confirmation that the 27% is there. I'm pretty sure if you do the math on that $1,400 difference, it's somewhere around 27%. Come back to my notes here. There is that. So now you have it. Now you can come from here. You can export this price list at this point because you've downloaded it. If you wanted to, tools, export, select data, and you can find the price list right there. You can do that, export that to, where to go? Desktop, to my desktop. And it should be sitting on my desktop. Which it is right there. It's a PLX file, and then you can email that or import it into another instance. The The hard part is if you're doing Xactimate online, there is, you can't import price lists to Xactimate online. You have to download it to an estimate online, just like we just did, just like I just illustrated. So, gentlemen, that is it. That is as complicated as it needs to be. The hardest part for all of us involved is the conversations with the adjusters. And I would not have this conversation alone. I would bring in your boss, or the highest level of your company, and then get the claims manager on the horn if this becomes an issue. The claims director, the claims manager, not the desk adjuster who doesn't know anything either, and definitely not the TPA. TPA or the independent adjuster. Don't get in these conversations with independent adjusters. They're no good to you. They can't help you anyway. So arguing with folks like that is just waste of breath, waste of time and energy. So let's hit it. Yeah, it's open now. I got some time in my afternoon. So if you guys want, I can bring you into the room here, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. And I'm gonna hit stop on the recording right there.
Yeah, we've been somewhat successful with